Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining the Texas chapter of Women in Localization event, Strategies for Coping with Stress and Uncertainty. We're going to give a few more minutes for everybody to join. We have people joining us right now. And it looks like people are logging in from all over the world and all over the US. Today's event will be interpreted by our sign language interpreters, Corey McMahon and Aaron Adams will be providing sign language interpreting. Thank you so much. So Women in Localization Texas chapter, and we wanted to make this event open to everybody, all the chapters. It looks like a lot of people from around the world are joining us. Women in Localization mission is to foster a global community for the advancement of women in the localization industry. And here's information on how you can join Women in Localization chapter. I'll keep this slide here for a couple more minutes or seconds. Women in Localization is an inclusive organization, welcomes members, anyone in the globalization, localization, internalization, and translation industry who is committed to supporting our mission to foster a global community for the advancement of women in the localization industry. Today's agenda we'll have a panel discussion from 1 to 2 p.m. We'll have a questions and answer session from 2 to 2:15, and we'll finish with a guided meditation from 2:15 to 2:30. Also, after the webinar, we will be sending you resources, information with resources from our panelists and from Women in Localization. So today, please meet our panel. My name is Ludmila Golovine, and I'm the CEO and President of MasterWord Services. We're a language service provider company. We have today joining us Lisa Dion, who is an international teacher, creator of Synergetic Play Therapy, founder and president of the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute, and a host of the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. She is the 2015 recipient of the Association of Play Therapy's Professional Education and Training Award of Excellence. She is also a Master Certified DeMartini Method Facilitator, working with individuals and organizations worldwide. Lisa trains therapists and mental care professionals on how to deal with stress that they are experiencing in the course of their work, and is very experiencing with helping people with the concerns that we may all be facing today. Dr. Alejandro Chaoul is the founder and director of the Jung Center's Mind, Body, Spirit Institute. He is a senior teacher at the Three Doors and has been a student of Tibetan Buddhism since 1989, studying with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, and Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. He is an assistant professor and director of education at MD Anderson Cancer Center's Integrative Medicine Program, where he teaches Tibetan meditation to cancer patients, their families, and caregivers, and researches. He talks about the effects of Tibetan mind-body practices with cancer patients. Alejandro was recently named a fellow of the Mind and Life Institute. And I believe Alejandro is also fluent in Tibetan. So if we can all join right now, the panel members, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, Lisa. As we are facing the current situation with COVID-19, when the whole world stopped all of a sudden, and we're all experiencing incredible stress, both personally, professionally, pretty much in every aspect of our life, as we also had to move to working remotely, and some of us are on lockdown, some of us are not able to leave their house, and people are and it's a situation that's creating tremendous levels of anxiety and stress. Um, People have questions on how do we handle this, and why is this situation so hard? So, Lisa, if I may ask you.
First of all, thank you, Mila, for coordinating this, and for all the women in localization chapters for coming together for this. So this is an important discussion for all of us to be having, and it does feel hard. And part of why it feels hard is because our brains and our bodies are designed to detect threats and challenges in our environment. So we are constantly scanning in our environment for information that lets us know, or maybe even sets us up to have an experience that says we might not be safe. And the mind and the corresponding body are looking for things like, are there physical safety issues that may be contributing to us maybe not being able to be well, really that our physical safety is really under attack. And the answer is yes. With COVID-19, that's one of the primary things that people are perceiving, is that we might not be safe. We're also having to encounter all kinds of, we call it incongruence in the environment. So the brain really likes to make sense of things. The brain really likes patterns. Well, there's so much unpredictability going on right now, and there's so much information coming in that is, we could call it incongruent. And our brains go, how do we make sense of this? All of these different pieces are coming together, and they're creating a sense of anxiety, stress, and uncertainty in the body. But I think it's important that we just start with the premise that it's normal, and that the responses that we're having right now make sense given the perceptions that we have, and given the information that's coming in, and how we are potentially perceiving the information. So our bodies are designed right now to activate, to try to do something, to go into what we're going to call a fight or flight response, which is to become anxious or overwhelmed, even panic. And our bodies are also designed, when it starts to feel like it's too much, they're designed to withdraw and shut down and collapse. And this is normal activation in our physiology. And so much of this is what many people are experiencing worldwide. Variations of highs and variations of lows. Variations of, I feel really activated and stressed and panicky, and I just want to fall asleep and shut the world out and take a nap and withdraw and pretend like nothing is really going on, and everything else in between. So that's what I want to say to start, Mila, is that how we're responding is normal. Our brains are designed to be responding to information that we perceive as a threat or a challenge.
And Alejandro, how do you see this from the contemplative perspective?
Well, first, again, thank you, Mila. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone in Women in Localization. I totally agree with Lisa in this aspect of the fight or flight response. And it's something that, on one hand, as Lisa said, we need to understand that this is our normal reaction. Our reptilian brain is organized in a way that when we feel a threat, we have this fight or flight response. And actually, if it is just one threat, let's say the typical example of the lion or tiger chasing us, not that I had that example personally, but maybe an exam, maybe a particular situation, maybe it was just a threat about these COVID-19, and then we're able to rebalance our system. What happens is that the sympathetic system got aroused, we have our organism, as Lisa was saying, but then there's an opportunity for the parasympathetic system to rebalance, and we go back to homeostasis, or to a sense of normality in our feeling. But when it doesn't happen, when we have a continuous sense of threats, or like what's happening now, it doesn't seem to stop the threat. So we get into chronic stress. And chronic stress is this exacerbated fight or flight response. So what can we do? So around 40 years ago, Herbert Benson in Harvard discovered what he then called the relaxation response, that through practices like meditation, we can actually rebalance the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. And we can see this in many meditation practices, also in some of the deep breathing practices, in what we call abdominal breath and so forth. So it is a question of disengaging from the stressor, that sometimes it feels like the stress itself, but we need to understand that there's a difference between the stressor itself. In this case, we can name it the big monster, COVID-19, as many of the doctors call it, the big monster. And then how do we react? If we react as stress, then we get engaged into that fight or flight response. But partly we have a choice. And I'm going to put choice in scare quotes because it doesn't feel like a choice. It actually feels exactly as Lisa was saying. I feel threatened. I feel in a space that is maybe I'm at home. Actually, myself, I'm now in an office. But when I'm at home, I have 2 kids at home, and they're doing college, and I feel that I'm not as comfortable. So when I feel that, how can I get back into that relaxation response? So there's many, from the contemplative side, there's many practices that we do that we call under the big rubric of meditation, but in a simple way is disengaging from being all the time in this brain address of the mind that sometimes I like to call the business address of the mind. Nothing wrong again, business, but actually sometimes it's good to disengage from that, particularly if it becomes a stressor, and re-engage in a place of home, in a place of the mind heart, in a place where there's more space and not need to constantly react. And as we are in that space and we get more familiar with that space, we're able to relax, but also maintain awareness in that space of the heart mind. And that is what we cultivate with meditation. And I'll mention in a little bit, for example, simple techniques that we can use that, like the STOP formula and others.
Great. Lisa, a question to you. What are the practical things that can be done? And I want to throw in a little bit of a range. And what happens if we don't do this?
So I would love to answer that by adding in another little piece to what Alejandro just shared with us, which was so beautiful. And I'm going to talk about it from the neuroscience side of it. So we just heard described that there's another aspect within us that we can access. This part of us that can engage the system to begin to relax. And it's really important that we understand what this is, because the little things that we can do are designed to be able to access this part of the system. For those of you that are on this, that really like the science part of it, we're specifically talking about engaging what's called the ventral vagus nerve. This is the part of the parasympathetic system that allows us to take a deep breath, allows us to have access into higher centers of our brain. It actually is one of the most important parts of our physiology to have a relationship with, because it's the fastest way to actually build our immune system. And when we're talking about being in a situation where immune function is potentially compromised, this is really a big deal. The language that I use to describe this has to do with when I'm feeling these waves of intensity, when I'm feeling the anxiety, when I'm feeling whatever it may be, the sadness, the frustration, how do I begin to regulate through it? And the word regulate from neuroscience, and the way I'm going to describe it, really means to connect. So I love the language that was just used around coming home. So if we can wrap our mind around what can I do in a given moment, and then what can I also do that's also an ongoing practice that allows me to come home and connect in such a way that gives me access to the part of my nervous system that helps me relax, I think is ultimately the question we're talking about. I think it's important too that as we are looking at this, that we understand that the goal is not so much to be calm. The goal is to be connected. And I think that's important right now to really understand, because sometimes I'm hearing people beat themselves up for the reactions that they're having. I shouldn't have responded that way. I should be more calm. I should feel more in control. But the reality is that we're having responses. We're in an ongoing event that for some is actually registering in some ways as traumatic, at minimum overwhelming for many. And so the question is, how do I connect with myself? Not so much be calm, but how do I connect with myself so that I am more regulated, I'm poised, I'm grounded within this activation that I'm experiencing? So really practical things. Let's say I am standing in my kitchen and I am feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling anxious, you know, my child or my 3 children or my 7 children all have different needs. They're all asking something from me. You know, I've got to be on a call in 10 minutes. I'm emotionally flooded. In those moments, what can I do to ground? Well, I can take a deep breath. I can also literally move my body, like literally move my body. So I can maybe rock back and forth, taking deep breaths. I can feel my feet in the ground. I can actually do things like squeezing my arms. Maybe everyone who's watching this right now, even just try this. Just squeeze your arms. Notice what it feels like to grab hold of yourself. Things like this. Taking a deep breath and putting your hand on your head. Splashing cold water in your face. Running your hands under cold water. I'm giving you little practical things that you can do in a moment when you start to feel overwhelmed, so that you can again connect with yourself in the midst of the activation, so that you can grab hold of the part of you that can begin to relax, and so that you know that you're with yourself in those moments. The second part of your question, Mila, of what happens if we don't? Emotional flooding. Emotional flooding happens when it's too much. It's too much. So we start to feel the activation. We don't regulate through it. We don't breathe. We don't connect through it. And it starts to spin. And next thing you know, we're raging. Next thing you know, our irritability is through the roof. Next thing you know, we're throwing something. Next thing you know, we've lost ourselves. We've spun out of control. Or the other direction, we start to shut down. We numb out. We start to withdraw in the family. We become emotionally unavailable. We start looking for things outside of ourselves to medicate ourselves. We zone out on alcohol, television, whatever it may be. because we don't know how to handle the intensity that we're experiencing inside.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too, because I think this flooding image is so real. This is what happens to us. And that's why, as I was mentioning at the end before, the stop formula can be very useful, because when we feel the flooding, we actually notice it. We feel, and the body gives us different signs. And so when we feel that, the stop formula is very simple, and it's an acronym, and you can try it now. So whatever you're doing, not the translator, please, but everyone else, stop, right? So whatever you're doing, just S is stop, and T is take a deep breath. As we take a deep breath, we bring that breath all the way into our abdomen, back through the nose. And O is observe. Just observe, be open to observe how you feel. And P would be to proceed, but maybe we're not ready. So we take another deep breath and observe. And now we proceed. So by doing this, we don't engage in the flooding. We don't engage in the stressor. And we also don't engage in this shutting, or as Lisa well said, engaging in non-healthy ways of trying to cope, but taking a deep breath and just breathing in, noticing, being aware. It's not just about being relaxed, as Lisa said, being aware and then proceeding. And again, I want to support what Lisa was saying with movement. If you see behind, I have a standing desk. I do work mostly standing because it is much better to be able to stand and maybe sometimes to sit down. If you have any of these devices, whatever brand you have, it might tell you to stand up every hour. It might tell you to breathe. 1 full minute. Can you imagine taking 1 full minute just to breathe? And when you start walking, it tells you, no, now you have to stop breathing. So fully breathing. All these things can be really, really useful. And the most important part is to be aware. Notice what your body is letting you know. And then use some of these very simple tools that what they do is they disengage from the stressor and they reconnect to yourself.
Alejandro, Lisa, so we have right now, as human beings, lost something very important to us. We've lost the ability to touch each other, right? Hugs, physical contact is very important. Social contact is very important. So I have a question to Alejandro from the contemplative perspective. And then it's the same question to Lisa from the neuroscience perspective. How do we deal with isolation? How do we deal with the loss that even if we are in the presence of somebody, it's no more okay to touch?
Right. No, it's a very good question and a very difficult one. I was just talking to my mother who's in Argentina and is by herself. And she was saying exactly, can you guys hug? You know, I'm luckily at home with my 2 kids and my wife and actually my sister-in-law. So we are quite a few. But this is an important part. I'm going to start with something simple, kind of touching, and I'm going to use this word, in both ways, so literally, but also, in a way, metaphorically, of touching your heart, right? So in a way, by doing that, you're bringing down what I was saying earlier. Instead of bringing the attention here, when you put your hand here, notice what happens. On one hand, you're bringing down the attention, but also there's a sense of self-care. When you breathe in there, there's a sense of saying, it's okay, whatever I'm feeling. And you're breathing and giving it space. And at the same time, you're giving a self-hug. It might not be exactly the same of getting a hug from your mom, your dad, your lover, or whatever, but there's a sense of that. So that's one thing. And we do these a lot in many of our practices, because when you do that, you also breathe into the space inside and tap into whatever quality is there. Maybe your loving kindness, your compassion, your peace of mind. And then from there, being able to breathe it into every cell of your body, breathe it into what I like to call the emotional immune system, the mental immune system, the spiritual immune system. also from the contemplative perspective, one of the things we do when we sit down to meditate, this word that Lisa mentioned before, connection. So it's not just about relaxing the mind, and just letting all go. Sometimes we could do that, and sometimes we do it too much, and then we hear the famous mantra of, we went too far, right? What we want is to maintain connected. Now, as we maintain connected, what we do in these practices is that we feel that we're not just by ourselves, but we're connected to the whole world. In for some people who believe in reincarnation, they would say, all your mothers of your past life, all your fathers of your past life, all the beings. But even if you don't believe in that, just a sense of, I'm interconnected to everyone. Or maybe start with a small circle. I'm interconnected to my family back in Argentina, to my cousin in Spain, to whoever you have in different places. Maybe if it is, as you're saying, down the street, but I can't hug them at this moment. Just feel that connection. And as we do that, you can feel their support. Now in this time, as we are seeing each other when I do my meditations weekly, many, many people are there, just seeing them, and some that some that you don't, you reckon it, there is a sense of, even if we can't physically hug, that we can be together. And I think that is very, very important. So one little thing that I wanted to finish with in this part is open your heart to that. Open your heart to being hugged in a different way. That it's not just the physical hug that provides that warmth and open-heartedness, but even at a distance, you can have that. And though for those who have family internationally, we've done this before, but this time feels even much more powerful.
So, Lisa, what happens to us in isolation, and why is isolation so hard?
So we, from a brain perspective, we have a social brain. There's a shared resonance between people. We are, in our own evolution and development, we are actually part of the herd. We are at the core of our design is a need to be part of, a need to feel part of the herd, to feel connected with others. I mean, even in our own development, we have to rely on someone to meet our needs. And so this idea of being in isolation, it doesn't make sense to the brain. I mean, there's a reason why in some prison systems, when you take someone and you put them in isolation and you remove physical touch, but then you remove everything else too, light and everything else, that people actually feel like they're going crazy. There's a truth to that, because we need other people to help us orient. We need to feel, I mean, when we interact with people, we feel there's energy moving between us. It helps us feel alive. It helps us feel, again, like we are a part of someone. So we have a social brain. I love this piece that was just shared around, we can still remind ourselves of that by placing our hand on our heart and reminding ourselves of the interconnectedness. Because if it's true that there really is a resonance between people, or there really is a sense or a felt sense of togetherness, we can still feel people even when they're not right here in front of us, and tapping into that. Now, the other part, from just a physical lens, is that the body itself actually needs contact. Literally, the physical body needs contact. So when we're craving hugs from someone, I'd have you look at, am I craving emotional connection, or am I craving physical grounding? So when we hug someone, they actually in the moment physically ground us. So that thing that I did earlier where I was touching my arms, this is me providing physical grounding and orientation into my body. So if we are isolated, if we're feeling like we need more interaction, in addition to the emotional pieces that we can tap into, it's things like wrap yourself in a blanket. When you take a shower, close your eyes and really allow the sensation of the water itself to land on your body and let the water embrace you and hug you. Go fill up your bath and go lay in the bath so you can feel surrounded by the warmth of the water in the bath. Find ways of actually providing literal physical contact to your body, in addition to the emotional connection that we can be also breathing and opening our hearts to. It's the combination of both that we crave and that we need.
Okay, so we talked about the importance of breath. We talked about the importance of physical grounding. How do we maintain the connection with each other at this time? What about the pressure on yourself, or the tendency going, okay, I have to figure out a way out. How do I think positive? Is it possible to think positive? What is the silver lining? How do, can we think positive, Lisa? Can one be remaining positive all the time?
So the answer to that is no. We have we have this in our experience. We have multiple sides. We have multiple emotions. We have multiple experiences. So I think this goes back to where we started, just around normalizing. The reality is that right now, many people are going to have moments when they feel like their head is just not above water. And with that, it's going to feel potentially hard inside. And then there are moments when, my goodness, the head goes above water. And I notice myself, I notice my breath. And wow, my way of viewing the world just shifted. And we go back and forth, back and forth. And so to have an expectation that right now I'm going to move through my world with my head completely above water all the time, always regulated, not having any of these waves attack while we are in the midst of an ongoing challenge, no, it's not human. So it's not human. We're in the waves. Do you want to add to that, Alejandro?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even many times for someone who, we're known for meditating, people think that we're always in this, equanimity state of mind. And that's not the case. We may have more tools to be able to be resilient and bounce back. So partly is this ability to bounce back. So noticing that I'm feeling flooded, as Lisa said earlier, noticing that I'm off my center and recalibrating back. Having the tools to say, whether it's as simple like the stop formula, like the breath, like the touching, whatever it is that you have at your disposal, know your toolbox. Maybe you need to stand, maybe you need to stretch, whatever it is. But that's what brings you back into that part. The other part, as you mentioned, Mila, the silver linings. I think when we are more open and not involved so much in this fight or flight response, we get more space and suddenly see, wow, even within this is a beautiful situation. I've heard of people say, now I can write the book that I've been trying to write for a long time. I have a friend, a musician, he's now writing a lot of his music. I find that for me, some of the silver linings, is that now that the kids are at home, For example, I celebrate my birthday with them. They would have been in college otherwise. So, and then not only knowing it, taking a moment and being aware of those silver linings feeds your heart, feeds what I'm calling the emotional immune system as well. And as Lisa was saying, this aspect of community, this aspect of the social component is so important. If we look back to George Engel in 1977, he published about that health is not just the realm of the physical, but it's the physical, the psychosocial, and the spiritual. And so you need the psycho-spiritual and the social. And so you need that social. In the contemplative practices, we have that from the very beginning also. In some traditions, they call it the Sangha, the community. When you go to church, to the synagogue, to the mosque, to the temple, that sense of when you go there, you know the prayers, but it's just praying in a group, being in the group, saying hello. And now we see that we're doing that even remotely with all these different platforms. So use them because it is very important. I recently, for Passover, had a Passover by Zoom with my family in all different places, and it was beautiful. For some reason, I hadn't done it in all the 23 years that I've been in the US, and I could have done, but now I'm going to probably do it every year.
Okay, I have a trick question. So if you're doing all of these things, the water, the breathing, the meditation, the exercise, and nothing seems to work, you still can't put yourself together. So what happens then? And I guess, Lisa, start with the neuroscience perspective. What does it mean?
Well, I wanted just to point out that implied in the question is an expectation. That there's an expectation that somehow I should be put together. Versus the allowance of sometimes I feel put together and sometimes I don't feel put together. And both are okay and both are normal. So I would really encourage people to let go of the expectation that you're putting on yourself that somehow you're supposed to be doing this a certain way, whatever the this is, or somehow you're supposed to be showing up or performing or, whatever it may be, handling homeschool, or because there are a lot of messages out there right now across social media that say you should do this, or you should be using the time like this. And it goes back to, can you just allow yourself to be? Can you allow yourself to have your own process related to the coronavirus? Because nobody is having the same process as somebody else. Everybody is having a unique experience, and everybody's needs there's some fundamental ones that we have in common, but everyone has slight variations on what ultimately they need right now. And so when you find yourself going, this isn't working, well, let's stop and go and ask ourselves, what do I think I'm supposed to be doing right now? What expectations am I holding of myself in the moment? Versus, what would it be like if I just took a deep breath and acknowledged I'm overwhelmed, or acknowledged it's not working? Maybe even let yourself just have a big cry. What would it look like if you just let yourself actually just fall on the floor and just have it? Last week, I had an afternoon where I felt overwhelmed. I was emotionally flooded. And again, I have a lot of tools and I'm still experiencing waves. And I had a moment of, wait a second, what is going on? And I came into this room that I'm in and I turned off all the lights and I allowed myself to lay on the floor with a blanket completely over my head. And I just laid there and just breathed and let go of the expectation that somehow I'm supposed to be more put together than what I was in the moment. I was where I was, and that was enough. And I stayed there for maybe, 10 minutes until I was able to, I don't know, something else emerged in me that said, okay, you're done. Time to move on to the next thing. But it's, let's let go of the expectation that somehow we're supposed to be different than who we are right now.
Right. And in addition to the expectation is the perception of the others that everyone else is coping well with it. Oh, because they're talking about the silver linings. Oh, come on, I'm not feeling that. That's okay. So it's okay what you're feeling, and it's okay what they are feeling, right? So being able to notice that even if we are in the same team, I work a lot with people at the medical center, and now we're doing these short meditations of 15 minutes almost every day. And when we do that, it's also an acknowledgement to accept, how am I feeling today? I'm not, like Lisa was saying, I'm not I'm not performing in the way I would like to, I should. Let me drop the should. Let me see how I actually feel and what can I do at this moment? What tools do I have? And also not blame the other for not doing because I can. I can do it, so you can do it. No, maybe it's affecting them in a different way, and being also able to say, that's okay as well. How can I help you in the things that you need? And also be open to be helped in the things that I need. I think a lot of times what happens in this sense of expectations and perceptions, we not only close down to our tools, we close down to be able to receive from others. If there's any time that it's important to receive, is now. I talked about this also with people with cancer that I work with at MD Anderson. When you're dealing with, that's a time that you're open to receive. Now, as Lisa said, we always are in this receiving and giving mode. Even though we think, particularly here in the US, we think I'm a self-made man, woman, whatever. That's totally not true. You're never self-made, right? We're always interdependent of other things that we need. But now more than ever, when you notice that, open your heart and receive. Receive that hug. Receive that nice word. Receive what is needed. Breathe with it. And then what you can, you also give. But be careful of your expectations. Be careful of your perceptions. And just take more moments to be with yourself, whether it's under the blanket, whether it's sitting and breathing, whether it's in the bathtub or whatever it is, and move also.
So we talk about, again, we focus a lot about being with yourself, but as part of our work, many of us work with teams. And actually, Common Sense Advisory did a recent survey and study, and it showed that one of the top priorities, or one of the top concerns, is the mental and physical health of our teams. It actually was ahead of being able to meet payroll, which, so how can we affect our team, Alejandro? So how can we, from your perspective, and then Lisa, the question will come back to you. So what can we do to support a team?
Well, first of all, as you meet with teams, so when you meet with your team, anyone who's listening today, you probably have these kind of meetings that now they are on any of these platforms. And so the first thing is, first of all, I think to acknowledge where we are. I notice that now we're much more allowing of being informal. I was recently in a meeting with the Psychiatric Association of Houston, and actually it was interesting that they said that the dress code was pants optional, right? But partly, in a way, it's putting you in the same level, right? And people would maybe, they're at home, maybe the cat comes in, or I had a friend that the monkey came out, and being able to be more human. And I would say that one of the nice things of starting a meeting in a team, always, but more so today, is how are you doing? Do you want to check in? How are you feeling today? Just bring your humanity in. Someone was telling me In the past, we were able to bring our anger into the office, but rarely we would share sadness as a team. It's okay. It's okay to share that you're not feeling well. It's okay. So I would start with that, then continue with a small, short tool of reconnecting both to yourself, but also to others. And maybe we'll do that at the end today. And so acknowledging the strength of the team, and that because of this situation that we're living, there are certain things that I'm not able to do at this moment that I was able. Lisa, can you help me with that? Mila, can you help me with that? So being able to reach out and notice where I need help of the team, and that doesn't show that you are weaker. It actually shows that you're stronger together. And that brings together a team that is stronger, works better. And my hope is actually that what we are learning here in this time, we will bring it afterwards, that it doesn't stop and say, okay, we did that then, now we can be back to our, strong and I don't need your help. And, that actually we maintain what we learn in this situation to bring in the next way of being, whatever that normality might be.
Lisa, how, talking about group dynamics, how do we affect each other as a group? Do we, are we all isolated, or what happens to our nervous system?
It's a beautiful question. So one of the ways that I like to describe this is when we interact with someone's nervous system, and this doesn't matter whether you're in person or over the computer. So right now, the four of us that we can see each other, we're doing this to each other right now. In a sense, our nervous systems are saying hello to each other. It's like, hello, hello, how are you? How are you? How are you? And this happens not just right now, but this happens as we engage with people. So we might even think of this as my nervous system has a certain activation, and when it comes in contact with your nervous system that has a certain activation, again, they say hello. There's a shared resonance that begins to happen. Right now, one of the shared hellos that we're having globally is anxiety. So it's kind of like this person started to feel anxious, and then their nervous system said hello to this person, and then this person, their nervous system got a little activated and then said hello to the next nervous system. And then there's this hello that we're all in now, and we're all going, hello, how's your nervous system? Probably fairly similar to my nervous system. And so we have this, this shared experience. I think understanding that is really important for group dynamics, particularly if you are the one that is facilitating the group dynamic. Because what it means is that the people that you are facilitating are actually going to borrow your nervous system. I'm going to say that again. They actually get to borrow your nervous system. Now, as I say this, I also want to be mindful of not adding pressure of, oh, great, now I've got to have my nervous system in check because everyone's going to borrow my nervous system. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is, can we be the one that sets the stage? Can we be the one that's willing to talk about the hard stuff? Can we be the one that offers everyone to pause and take a deep breath? Can we be the one that's monitoring maybe a little bit more of what's happening in our own bodies? And maybe we could pause, take care of ourselves, recognizing that that's actually going to influence everybody else in the room or everyone else on the call as well. So I actually think it's a beautiful offering and a beautiful invitation for people to show up and be maybe a little bit more authentic, a little bit more vulnerable. Because within that space, there's also an invitation of, and what can I do about that in this moment to connect with myself? And therefore, how can I invite the people that I'm facilitating to also be curious about what they need and allow them to be a bit more vulnerable and a little bit more authentic? I'll tie this in with the last piece we said around the social brain. When you are together as a group, the more the hearts of the group open, the more you actually feel connected. The more you actually feel, oh my gosh, I am being held in this community. I'm being held by my team. I'm being held by this group. But it takes a certain level of vulnerability and authenticity and the willingness for someone to say, hey, let's pause. Let's check in. Let's notice. Let's ground ourselves. What can we do right now? And from that place, people actually, it's an invitation for people to borrow the invitation, borrow our nervous system, borrow our breath. It's an important part of leadership that I don't think we talk about enough. And COVID-19 is really opening that up for a new possibility of even what leadership even means.
So very, very interesting. So as one person, you can affect a whole room in a way.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Alejandro, how do you deal with the uncertainty of financial situation today? Because we don't know if we have money, if we don't know if we have the $1,200 check, and that's all we have to live on. We don't know if we have jobs. How do we deal with the elephant in the room, and that is the financial stress? And I know Houston, Lisa's in Colorado, but Houston is affected with not just the COVID crisis, also the oil and gas industry has collapsed, and it has huge ripple effects. So what advice can you give to people on how to manage that internally?
Well, and that's the part internally. The external part is, again, what drives us in the exacerbation of the fight or flight response, and uncertainty is even exacerbating it more, because it's like the anticipatory anxiety. So anxiety is pretty bad in terms of the kind of how it arouses our sympathetic system. But but anticipatory anxiety is even more, because it's like you don't even know what's going to happen, and that stresses you more than when you know. In one of the research studies that we did at MD Anderson, it was with a woman with biostatic breast biopsy. And what we noticed is that there was more anxiety from the time of the biopsy until they actually received the test than after the test, even if it was positive or negative. So that sense of that anticipatory anxiety, that's what happens in uncertainty. And usually many times, and Lisa can talk more about this, the brain seems to go to the worst case scenario. So we may not now be having a financial problem today, but because we know that this is getting longer, we already are living as if we were in this depletion time. And that itself stresses us now. So we're allowing ourselves to be in the future, in a future that seems much grimmer than now. And that itself is stressing our present moment. So partly from the contemplative part is, how about being in the present moment and just noticing what's happening now? Am I hungry? Am I able to provide? And I know there's different people are in different situations. So I don't want to minimize this, because it could be a very difficult situation. At the same time, we can strengthen our inner aspect to be able to be in a place both where we have more tools internally, but also have more resources of space to think, to feel new possibilities that we hadn't thought before. So when we are in this internal space, as I was saying before, of our home, what happens is that as we disengage from the fight or flight response that narrows our mind into that response that can win that situation or fly away for the next fight, we're in a place of more openness. In a place of more openness, we have much more access to our resources and new ideas, new possibilities that we never thought within the fight or flight response moment now arise. And that's the beauty of these situations when you're able to go deeper there and connect to that moment and to what brings meaning in that moment and the space for a new solution.
Lisa, any tools from the neuroscience perspective on this question? Any tools for staying in the present moment? Anything we can do?
So it's really putting everything we've talked about so far together. So it's the breath is your fastest way home. I think that we can just say that the breath is always, if you need a go-to, it's the breath. Right now, it's the breath plus movement, plus some of these other strategies. I mentioned some of those other ones around, bringing actual physical contact or splashing cold water on your face or, holding on to yourself or stretching, or let's even bring in some fun ones. Turn on your favorite song, dance, sing, things like this that return us back, because we don't ultimately know what's going to happen. And so whatever we can do to come back to ourselves, to center, to give us access to higher centers of our brain, which give us the ability to respond instead of react. When we are caught up in the dysregulation of the fight or flight or wanting to shut down, we can't forward think well. We can't plan. We can't logically start to put something together just in case, because we're simply in reaction mode. So step one is we have to come back. And what tools? Maybe it's picking up the phone and calling a friend. There have been times when I've called my very best friend and I've said, ground me. Just ground me right now. Just help me out of the deep end. And great, just having that conversation helps me back into myself. Sometimes it's cooking a nice meal. Whatever it takes, because from there, naturally, as Alejandro was saying, naturally, there's an opening. Naturally, there's insight. Naturally, there's foresight, naturally, because we're accessing different parts of our brain that allow us to look at the big picture, that allow us to see beyond the tunnel vision that we're having in the moment because we're in this stress response. So it's a combination of allowing yourself to connect and feel, and then allowing yourself to plan if you need to. But the planning does not come before the connecting and the feeling and the grounding yourself. Let that lead the way.
And that's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. We have a couple minutes before we go to questions and answers. So, Alejandro, do you have kind of a summary to add or to conclude with the main discussion part?
Yeah, so I think from the contemplative part, when we think and things that we've spoken before, both Lisa and I, it's not just about being able to be in that moment of disengaging and re-engage, is cultivated as a practice. So you have it as a tool. So whether it is through a movement, through getting under the cover, whether it's with breathing, of course, and as I totally agree with Lisa, breathing is probably the fastest way in. As we know, we're probably always breathing, but we're not conscious of that. So bringing the mind's attention of consciousness to the breath and the body. And so as we get familiar with these tools, as we get familiar both with the tools and with that experience of being at home, what happens is we get more familiar. We can expand the time. We can expand our opportunities of being at home. And as we abide more there and be more comfortable, these experiences naturally arise, as Lisa was saying. So I would advocate to not only have tools, but use them. And use them not only at the time of difficulty, but use them at the time when you're fine, so you know how to use them. So when the S hits the fan, you're ready to use them, and you're not in that fight or flight response that doesn't allow you to, where's the tool? So be able to use them enough, familiarize yourself to do them. And in a nutshell, when we do these practices, I'm not talking about, meditating an hour a day. I know that most of you don't have that, although we all have 24 hours. But, maybe spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes. What happens if you do that every day and notice over the, time of a week or a month, what's the difference, particularly in noticing in those difficult moments, how do you have them at the tip of your fingers and how you're able to change a particular situation.
Well, thank you. And now we're going to open the chat to questions and answers, and we already have some questions coming in. First, one of the questions is, do introverts cope better than extroverts with this whole situation?
Can I answer this one since I'm an introvert?
Yes. Go ahead.
The answer is not necessarily. I think that is the assumption. But one of the things about introverts is that introverts still need connection and contact, but too much is also challenging. Just like the extrovert who needs the connection and wants more of the social engagement, when they're not able to get it in that same way, that's also challenging. I can share that for me personally, in my home, the challenges that are arising in my home, in my family dynamic, have to do with the fact that I'm an introvert, that I'm having a hard time finding my own space, that I need my own time to think. And that before, when school was happening outside the home, I travel internationally a lot and teach. My time on airplanes, that was my contemplative time. It was my quiet time. So I'm in an ongoing question of, how do I create my airplane in my home? How do I find the quiet time? Which has led me personally to develop a ritual of every morning I go for a walk, and that is my time. Even when my daughter says, "Mommy, can I come with you?" my answer is, "No, sweetie. We can go on a different walk later." But the one in the morning is Mommy's quiet introvert time, where I get to think and feel and connect. So I don't necessarily think that being an introvert is better or worse in the situation. Everybody is having challenges because everybody's human, and everybody's construct, or there's shifts for everybody, and everybody's adapting in whatever way is relevant to them. So that's what I would offer as an introvert.
Okay. Well, the next question is quite interesting. And the next question has to do with routines. How can I create a routine, and are routines important? And I don't know if Alejandro and...
I'll start. I think routines can be very important, particularly the routines that are useful to you. So maybe this is an opportunity to notice which of the routines bring you a sense of openness and, that you feel good with, and which are the routines that you don't. So I find, in the same way that Lisa in the morning takes that walk, and I, usually would start with my personal meditation, but what we've started doing with my wife is we start in the morning of doing a meditation, just the two of us. And it's a very short one, it's 10 minutes. And then we have Agustina might be relating to this. We have some mate together, some yerba mate, which is an Argentinian drink, and we talk a little bit, and then that's our moment together before the kids wake up. Before, I mean, the dogs are still there, but it's our ritual, and then we continue the day. Having, whether you call it ritual or routines, can be very useful. Another routine that I did keep also from work, partly, as you said, Mila, because we're in Houston and we have certain advantages. I bike to work. So I bike from home to work. I still do that. And I'm able to then be here most of the times by myself. Sometimes there's one or two more people. And then I bike back home, which allows me it's like Lisa's walk. When I'm biking, I am by myself, and I'm also almost like what they call in Japan, the forest bathing. There's a lot of beautiful trees here. I go through Rice University and I just feel that. So those are some of my routines. Also, if you are with your family, both now and in other times, finding some routine of eating together. Maybe it's at dinner, maybe it's whatever. I find that these routines are important to maintain some of the things that we're talking about, the social connection. So yes, I find supportive, but I also know that sometimes we engage in routines that are not healthy, and these are the times to drop them.
I'd love to add a piece in with children from that perspective, because I imagine that there are a lot of parents that are listening. The younger the child is, the more the routine is actually really important. So, and routine simply means predictability. That's what routine means. And predictability creates a sense of safety. And I mean, we're talking right now about the uncertainty being part of what is activating the fight or flight response for us. So one of the ways we can actually counter that is by creating predictability in our home. So I like to take the word routine and switch it out with the word rhythm, because routine can get rigid. And the reality is, because things are changing so much right now, we actually have to have some level of flexibility. And so it's more like, what's your rhythm of the day? What's the predictable rhythm that your family moves through? And within that, what are the rituals that your family does? So maybe the ritual is everybody starts off with breakfast in the morning, and then maybe the next ritual is that there's a certain way that homeschool time happens. Maybe the afternoon ritual is that everyone is outside together for 30 minutes. Maybe that's that ritual. So I like that language of, what are the rituals that you do throughout the day with your family? And how do you do it in a way that creates a predictable rhythm? So for the child to get a sense of, yep, in the morning, we tend to do this. Yep. And by lunchtime, it sort of tends to be like this. And then in the afternoon, it tends to be like this. And then in the evenings, it tends to be like this. That there's something really beautiful about creating a flow of predictable rituals that happen throughout the day, which still allows for some flexibility eating this. Children need a voice right now. So being able to have a family meeting and asking each member of the family, what is one really important thing to you that you would love to have happen every day for the family? Or what is something that feels important for you? Because we're talking about regulating ourselves and doing certain things that allow us to connect. Well, what about our kids? Do we offer that same discussion or that same curiosity for our kids? What's the thing that we notice that helps our kids connect? How do we help them move? How do we help them breathe? How do we help them with this? And if we can find a way to help our children have a voice, help them also come home, and find a way to do it where there's a predictable rhythm, you've got something that's actually potentially workable, that can actually create a sense of safety for you and the family members.
And we have, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. It's excellent tool. And we have two questions that came in that are very interesting. They're on the opposite side of the spectrum. One of them is we currently seem to work more, and there seems to be a lack of separation between life and work. So how to establish a separation between life and work. And on the opposite side of the spectrum is how do you handle being laid off at this uncertain time? So I don't know if in the last 5 minutes, Alejandro, Lisa, you can both address the two different spectrums.
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. We've noticed that in our office as well, that people working from home feel that they're working more. So one of the things, of course, from the group and particularly from the administration, making sure to let them know that take your breaks, take as much breaks as you need, and do all the things that we've been talking. Stand up, go for a walk, meditate, breathe, dance. If in the middle, yes, it is working time, but I need to dance. Put whatever your favorite music and dance, take the time. And, many of our people here are saying, after whatever time, after 5, after 6, that's it. I'm not seeing any emails. I'm not doing, that is fine. So being able put some limits, and as from people in the managing side, don't push them so much. This is a time to give them more breathers. They are probably already working much more than needed. So that would be one. From the other side of being laid off, I think it's a hard time for both sides, for people who have to lay off, and of course, even more for those who get laid off. And again, go back to a sense of meaning. Okay, this is my situation now. How can I connect? What can I do next? But being able also to even mourn, to be in that moment of grief that I lost this, that I lost that reality that was for some time, and being from that, something may come up. But it is also important to acknowledge the difficulty of it. It's not, I wouldn't say it's healthy to just say, okay, nothing happened. I think it is important to acknowledge it and find ways of connecting. And as Lisa was saying earlier, call a friend, find what are the sense of support. What I was saying earlier, this is the time to receive as well.
Lisa?
I'll start with the first question first also. So we'll go back to the word ritual. There were things that we did on a daily basis that were rituals that we might not have even considered as rituals, such as when you were at the office, there was a certain typical process you went through when you wrapped up your day. And then you typically had a walk home or a drive home. And you may not be acknowledging that that was actually a ritual. That was actually a time frame where you shifted. You said, I'm done here. I'm getting in the car, or I'm walking, or I'm getting on my bike, or I'm getting in the subway, and I'm now shifting so that I arrive home in a different way. That's different than being on a call's done, standing up, walking out the door, and the kitchen is on the other side of the door. There was no transition time. There was no ritual. Create rituals still for yourself at the beginning and at the end. Maybe it's, I get my cup of coffee. Or if you don't drink coffee, maybe it's, I get my drink of water. And you have it actually be your ritual where you tell yourself, and this is the start of my work time. Maybe you come into your room, maybe you stretch, maybe you orient, maybe you create a ritual for yourself. And then when you're finished, don't just hang up and walk out the room. Take 5 minutes and ground yourself. Give yourself time to transition. So again, maybe it's the ritual of Getting quiet and thanking yourself for being of service that day. Maybe it's a moment of recalling, how were you helpful? Maybe it's a couple minutes of gratitude. Then whatever that may be, maybe then it's the closing of the laptop. Maybe you put your laptop in a certain place in your office, and then you transition to the kitchen. Really important that we create bookends so that we separate out work time from family time. The last piece, because I'm aware of time here, for if we have lost our job, it's going back to everything we're talking about, recognizing that the way through it is the way through it. You can't bypass it. You can't think your way out of it. It's really, how do I connect with myself in the anger, the sadness, the intensity, whatever it is, and how can I do it in a way where I let myself be human, I let myself feel, I let myself acknowledge the hardship, and then at some point I let myself have access to what do I want to do about this? How can I begin to plan? How can I reach out for help? What do I need to do?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. And we are going to, number one, make the presentation recording available for those who attended. I know that some of you had difficulty with sound and you couldn't hear it, so the presentation will be available. We'll also be sending you, after the presentation, this slide with resources or information with resources that are both available at the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute, at the Mind Body Institute, and the Jung Center. And MasterWord has a wellness connection page with resources as well. And the bottom that's covered with our pictures right now, we'll be sending information on how to join Women in Localization, and links on how to join Women in Localization. And with this right now, I would like to transition to our meditation. So I'm actually going to turn off my picture and leave it, actually stay with Alejandro. And Alejandro, thank you for guiding the meditation.
Thank you. And as Lisa was saying, let's do a small transition. Let's stand up and stretch in whichever way is comfortable. And just relax your upper body and legs and just breathe and be comfortable as you get back into whatever sitting posture was comfortable for you. And as I said earlier, not so comfortable that you fall asleep. So I'll guide you into a short meditation. So as you hear that bell, just take an opportunity of disengaging from whatever activity and re-engaging with your breath. Let the mind guide your breath into your body as you find a comfortable rhythm of your breathing. Noticing that you may be breathing through your nose or your mouth. And start to breathe more through your nose, both in the inhalation as well as the exhalation. Every breath, in the exhalation, you disengage a little more. In the inhalation, you re-engage, kind of dropping in more fully in this present moment. Your eyes may be open or closed, whatever is comfortable. And for many at the beginning, it's better to have them closed, but not too tight. Of course, if you're looking at the ASL translation, keep them open. And as you keep breathing, notice that you can breathe all the way up to your lungs, or you can connect and breathe a little deeper towards your abdomen. I would suggest the latter, and as you do that, bring one hand or both hands right in front of your belly button. Notice how you feel when you breathe all the way into your abdomen and you bring that breath, inflating it like a balloon as you breathe in. And then when you're ready, letting go when you breathe out. Breathe in and inflate the balloon. Breathe out, let go. A couple more times at your own rhythm. And anytime your mind gets distracted, bring it back to your breath, through your nose, into your abdomen, back through your nose. Without judging what distracts you, without criticizing yourself for being distracted, just come back gently to your breath. And as you keep on breathing into your abdomen, notice your sits bones on the chair, your legs on the ground. Notice that as we keep on breathing in that way, we're connecting to the earth. That earth that supports us all, even if we're in different locations. We're all together. So take a moment to feel that sense of grounding. Noticing your abdomen and your lower back. Straighten your spine and back a little more. Elongate your spine, and maybe if it's comfortable, stretch your arms up a little more. But still breathe into your abdomen and back through your nose. Letting tensions of your shoulders and your back release. When you're ready, allow the arms to slowly come down and be comfortable by placing your hands on your lap, palms up and elbows out. Opening your chest and your heart so that as you keep on breathing, you let go the attention on your brain and drop into your body and your heart. Your mind gets distracted and you want to bring it back to the breath. Sometimes you can visualize your breath as green light or any color light, just as a sense of focus. Still breathing from your nose into your abdomen and back through your nose at a rhythm that is comfortable. Feeling the support of your breath as your anchor and of your body as a sense of stillness. With your mind, instead of roaming around, just coming back to your breath and settling in your body. Even the chattering of the mind quieting down so we can pay attention to the silence. So that instead of letting our mind wander to thoughts, lists, sounds, we pay attention to the silence as a doorway in, to our inner peace, and breathe. Relaxing a little more your mouth and your jaw, and letting your tongue rest in your upper palate. Letting your back be straight, but your Shoulders relax, allowing your heart to be open. Strong back with a soft front. And if it's comfortable, bring that hand or both hands into your heart. And breathe. That self-hug, that touching, that acknowledging, that you telling yourself, I'm here for myself. And allow to feel whatever you feel, even if it's not pleasant, if it's uncomfortable, uncertainty, all the things that we touched upon. But just feel it. Breathe and be with it. Not from your brain, but from your heart. Notice what happens even in the just being with it. Notice that as you breathe in it, there's more space in your heart. Space to tap into other qualities like loving kindness, compassion, joy, peace of mind. And as you breathe into them, see what's available and let that quality nourish every cell of your body. Nourish you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And notice how you feel. That open-heartedness with that quality. And if it's comfortable, extend your arms, right and left. If we were in the same room, we would be standing and holding hands in a big circle. Do it. Hold hands. Maybe you still feel energetically a hand that you're connecting with on your right and left in that open-hearted way, and breathe. Being able to give, but also to receive as we all breathe together. Knowing that wherever you are, you're all a big team. You can always reach each other. Individual strengths and weaknesses, or things where we're stronger or more apt, but we are stronger as a team. And breathe into that, and then let go of the hands, coming back to your heart. Maybe a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for each other. Gratitude for this moment. In a sense of cultivating an open-heartedness. My traditions would say this is like medicine or nectar that we pour in the ocean, and it's available for everyone, including ourselves. And so as we wrap up, slowly, without opening your eyes if they're closed, just stretch. Stretch your arms, your legs, whatever is needed. Massage any part of the body that needs it. And maybe open and close your eyes as you integrate with the external world without losing touch of your inner home. And so you do it slowly. Very slow. And you can always, if you don't have like these 10 minutes to meditate, you can do it less. Every time now that we use the hand sanitizer or you wash your hands, besides maybe singing happy birthday twice, what about actually not just washing your hands, but washing your mind? And then, as we are said to say, when we are meeting with someone, we can't hug them, but we can say namaste, or we can say, I wish you from my heart the best to your heart in that giving and receiving. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Chaoul. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to our wonderful interpreting team, Aaron and Corey. And thank you to Women in Localization for making this event possible. So let's all stay connected, and thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we'll be sending you the information by email with additional resources and how to join Women in Localization. Thank you.